game's over.
Welcome into Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at Josh G. Buck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. We are in the thick of things, man. The NBA season is rolling. Everybody's had about 2 games. Some played their third just now, tonight, but it's the thick of it, and everything is going just about as well as you could have hoped. The NBA's bubble has really worked out, and even the few breaks that they've had, they've kind of contained it very well. So they have pretty much set the example for sports leagues, them and the NHL, obviously, for getting this thing done right. Baseball, on the other hand, different story. But we are not talking baseball this time. I know we led off with it last episode, but we're going to talk straight NBA this time, and we're going first down to New Orleans, to the Bayou. Zion Williamson, reportedly unhappy with his minutes restriction, was basically quoted as saying that the moment they see him break a sweat, it's over with for him. You know, he's been under the watchful eye of the trainers. His coach has even spoken, so it's like he's leaving it up to them to determine when he's out there, when he looks winded. And honestly, he's been averaging about 15 minutes per game. He actually got 25 minutes against the Memphis Grizzlies on Monday night. And honestly, when you watch Zion, it's kind of funny because he's got a gait where he kind of does a side-to-side thing when he walks. So, like, off bat, you might have an inkling that he might be fatigued or something might be wrong. It's just how he moves. But on top of that, like, he's a big dude. He's going to sweat. So I also wonder, how is it that you're stretching him out if you're taking him out when he starts sweating? That's kind of what you need. I would wait to see more fatigue than just sweating. But I know they were saying they're worried about his conditioning is more of a factor than him actually getting injured. He was away from the team for a little while, so that's understandable. But again, I can't see not playing him until he's physically tired. Now, you can't ask him. He's not going to tell you he's tired. Obviously, he's vocal about wanting to play, but I think more importantly, you kind of see that there's some trust both ways. The coach trusting the training staff, and Zion trusting them despite being unhappy with what he was doing. This is the first we'd heard about it. And then the fact that he comes out and speaks on it, and you give him 25 minutes that same night. That's a very good communication, open communication, in my opinion. The team, they pulled another game up on Memphis, who's now still sitting in the AC. But Memphis has a tough schedule, and I think New Orleans has a better team. I'm not really sure though. They're kind of both surface level. In terms of consistency, like your top line guys, the starters are fine. You get into the depth and you start getting shaky in what you're going to get each and every night. The Kings aren't going to do it. No, they're disappointing. But I just don't know if Zion. I'm sure the NBA wants Zion in the playoffs, but I don't know how they would want him. How they wouldn't want Morant. I know Zion's a bigger draw. I get it. You would think they would want them both and wouldn't want to force it, but more importantly than anything, back to the Zion point of this, he complained when he was getting about 15 minutes. He was 15 and 14 the other game, and then on Monday against the Grizzlies, he got 25 minutes, 23 points, and he's back to that efficient scoring. He was 9 of 21 tonight. Not terrible, not the efficiency that he's used to seeing, but another solid night. And again, even more important than the overall minutes was that he was in there in the closing moments of the game, and I think that's something that speaks volumes to, again, how much they trust him after he spoke out, and how I guess free he felt to speak that much. This is his franchise. This is Zion's franchise going forward. Nothing else will matter except for what happens with him. And I saw the question posed: what message does that send to the veterans on the team? But I had to ask, what veterans are there really on the team that are worth considering their opinion on? Now, you could argue Drew Holiday, but he's a team-first guy. I don't think he's going to be ruffling too many feathers. Derek Favors is definitely not a guy you're going to, and you're concerned. Like, not to be disrespectful, that's not what I mean, but you're not shaping your franchise based on the opinion of a Derek Favors. Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball, do they qualify as veterans yet? And if they do they qualify as veterans who get to dictate, or who really have a position on this, to take a position on this? I think that more importantly, the franchise knows where its bread is going to be buttered in the near future and distant future if they play it right. And it's not with any of those guys. It's definitely going to be a Zion Williamson thing going forward. So, like I said, good to see him back on the floor. Good to see him getting more minutes, and good to see him in the final moments of the game. Good for him. Houston and Miami are two teams. Now, I've been talking about Houston. I was talking before everything shut down. That was one of my dark horse teams to make it to the Western Conference Finals. Miami was a team that I had broached a few times about reaching the Eastern Conference Finals, but I hadn't really gotten a chance to see them too often. But with the bubble restarting, I've gotten a chance to see them. And here's what I've noticed about Miami. They still have that Pat Riley trademark. Everybody's going to be in shape and they're going to play hard, and they're a gritty team. They don't shoot very well, but they muck it up. And it reminds me of a bootleg version of the Raptors, right? This year's version of the Raptors, where the Raptors are pretty much a better offensive team, but that's because I think a lot of it's due to them playing together and knowing each other a little bit better. They're better shooters, but in the game on Monday, they played each other, these two teams, which is what brought that immediate comparison up. And the Raptors ended up winning that game. And what I found, I don't know if I say fascinating, but definitely an interesting thing of note was that the Raptors shot 50% from three in that game, while Miami was around 30 or 41%, something like that. It was much lower. And as much as Toronto can do what they've done on Monday, it's not going to happen often. They're shooting 50% from three. A couple of balls break the other way, and you can see Miami making this a series. Houston is so different from everything that you're seeing, and I think we get wrapped up in the James Harden of it, but everybody else fits so well with it. And I saw brought up, and I believe it was during the broadcast, and they talked about how the change from going to the ultra small ball lineup, where nobody's taller than 6'7", right, on the whole team. That wasn't for Harden, and we know that, but like I think it kind of gets lost in the wayside. It was for Russ, and the important part about that, why that's such a big deal, is people talked about how Russell Westbrook couldn't fit in with James Harden. There wasn't enough basketball for what they tried to do. Their styles wouldn't mesh together. And one of the reasons why I was high on them before everything slowed down, and why I still kind of at least find them intriguing, is that they're kind of like a thunder and lightning 1-2 punch, right? We know James can score in buckets. We know he's going to get you a ton of points. We know he's going to be able to carry you offensively most nights. But what we also know is that he has a tendency, now maybe it's different this year with the whole shutdown, but that's not what they built it for. They built it for for an entire season. We know that he wears down, and that we've seen him kind of fade away in the playoffs. Well, if anything, Russ needs to calm down a little bit in the playoffs. There's times when he shot the team out because he just, he was trying to do a little bit too much. I think we could see a really solid balance with the two of them, where they're both kind of alternating. Like, I just really think it's a nice counterpunch when you have James Harden lulling you to sleep and drawing fouls and kind of playing the technical aspect of the game, and then you just got bull rush Russ coming down the lane. That's a really solid one too. And then the guys that they have around them, there's defense to protect Harden, and then there's shooters to protect Russ. Now, Harden benefits from the shooters and Russ benefits from the defense around him, but you get the idea. The opening up of the lane was, I think, a bit of catering to another person, Russ, that I don't think many people really foresaw happening. They talked about how they could work that out, but I don't think anybody saw Mike D'Antoni bending the system to a Russell Westbrook. I think it helps that Russ and Harden have such a good relationship, and obviously they're California growing up and in OKC. But I think it was still interesting to wait and see, how it would all unfold. And again, with the restart, while you have a lot of teams still trying to find their footing, and I'm sure by the time the playoffs roll around, everybody will be pretty much in tune. But the Rockets don't really have to get in tune. They just have to do what they do. It's two guys mostly, and then everybody else stand around, be in the corner, be prepared to shoot and hit the shot. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of variation. They're not surprising you. You know what's going to happen, but they do it so well. And I think it's the Suns, and a mix with a little bit of the Warriors, but with like tunnel vision between two guys. And then everybody else just kind of has to get the drip off. It's a wild thing, but them and Miami are two teams. I wouldn't even mind seeing that in the finals. That'd be nice. it's just the Rockets are never out of it, and Miami is going to be in shape, and they're going to beat you up, and they're going to play, and they're going to be right there. Two teams that I think are very could be big factors in their respective conferences going forward. Bobby Marks, speaking of the Raptors, was speaking on Fred VanVleet, and he made a very good point. VanVleet went off 30-some-odd points against the Heat. He's a great talent, but there's really no market for him. He listed Bobby Marks on. Go ahead and follow him on Twitter. Listed a bunch of teams off where there was just no market, basically, and it's to the Raptors' benefit. I thought to myself, damn, after Toronto kind of got, I don't want to say screwed, because they got a championship out of it, and they went for it all, and they got it. No risk it, no biscuit, right? But after they kind of lost out on the Kawhi sweepstakes, when you think about it, they probably never really had a chance to retain him anyway. But when they could end up keeping one of their better players, especially somebody that they developed, Fred VanVleet, an undrafted player, is about to, in a normal year, get paid. But with the reduced salary cap and the lack of openings out there, because there's not many places that need another point guard. Very few that don't have one at least waiting in the wings that they're developing currently. Phoenix, I don't think nobody's money. They just paid Rick Rubio, so yeah, nobody has the money for it. But that's an interesting story to watch, because VanVleet's one of the few guys on the suppressed market anyway. It was already going to be a very dry market. But then there's less money now because of the shutdown, and you have the fewer openings. Toronto could end up being a major come up after having a year where, despite winning a championship, they still had a big loss not being able to retain Kawhi. Jonathan Isaac of the Orlando Magic tore his ACL, and it's unfortunate that it happened. This was after he I don't want to say refused, but he did not take a knee with his teammates and said he did not want to wear the jersey, and spoke on his religion in doing so. He tore his ACL, and he'll be out for a while. It's tough for him, a guy who's had lower leg injuries. He came out with a leg injury. He wasn't fully healthy, obviously. Orlando is just, that's so Orlando for this to kind of happen. So Florida, right? But so Orlando for something like this to happen. But when he did do when he did stand, Michael Porter Jr., who coincidentally was wearing a message on his jersey, was lauding him on social media, saying he loves this and, go for it. Michael Porter Jr., we talked about how he was questioning all of the kneeling and stuff, and saying that he didn't feel like it was the right thing because it was basically propaganda. And then you had Myers Leonard of the Miami Heat, who stood as well, citing his military family. Here's the thing. I feel like it's been hyper commercialized, the kneeling, to the point where we're getting in dangerous territory where it's the meaning I think has been gone, but I think the impact overall is being too commercialized, where people are going to become numb to it. Personally, 4 years ago would have been a great time for all this to be happening, and 20 some odd years before that would have been an even better time for all this to start happening. And of course, I'm referring to Colin Kaepernick and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, Chris Jackson, who was pretty much blackballed from the NBA after he took his stand during the NBA's national anthem. Listen, you are free to do what you want, and each one of these guys was totally free to do what they want. The I don't want to say issue, but where I think they got into dangerous territory in this super polarized and politicized world is they decided to make it a story, as opposed to just saying I felt that this was the way that I should do it. Talk to my teammates about it, and they supported, because everybody's teammates supported what they were doing. That's an important part. None of these guys' teammates were, at least publicly, blasting them for it. All of them, when their pictures had somebody touching on, they had hands on shoulders, and guys were wrapped arms. So this is an outside in issue. And in the moment where I said it, when Jonathan Isaac made his stance, people are going to take this and it's going to become a political football. He's going to be a poster child. His jersey sales skyrocketed. It's dangerous now, and it's not because you have to conform. I just don't know if, when there's such a, it's I feel like they made a story where there wasn't one, and because these are young guys, they contributed to that. No one should bash them for not wanting to kneel or to wear a shirt. That's fine. But the stance against it was very publicized, and I think that was debate put out there, and they at least in part, took it. I think they gave thoughtful answers. I'm not sure I agree with their complete answer, but they seemed very introspective about why they were doing what they were doing or weren't doing, rather. And I can't knock them for that. So again, I don't, it's not an issue of not wanting to do it. That's fine. But to make the story about you had Isaac inserting religion into it, and you had Myers inserting the military, and it's like, okay, but that's not what that's for. But okay, you know what I mean? It was one of those things where it's like you're still not quite getting it, and that's what I think made Isaac's statement so disheartening to a lot of people, because it was not tone deaf, but definitely not getting the point that people were trying to get across, and he seemed like he was basically helping dilute or to muddy the water exactly of what was going on. But hope he recovers soon, because he's got a very promising career. 6'11", dude can play 3 through 5 and defend. Hope he gets back. It was rough. They shouldn't have put him back out there. Like I said, man, that's such a Orlando thing to do. That's why I say some teams are pretty much not destined, doomed, but they will be glorified farm teams until they can figure out things like that. There's no reason he should have been out there. They're not winning a championship this year. If he's got leg issues, let him get healthy. Just let him get healthy. I was wondering about, and this is going to be something I touch on in the future, so I'm going to just tease it right now, but I'm definitely going to explore it a little bit further. The dynamics of duos around the NBA. We kind of are in a hiatus from the big three, and we might be in that for a while, considering the cap constraints that are about to be imparted upon the NBA. But I got to thinking about the dynamics in the duos, and really it was spurred by the Lakers win, clinching first place in the Western Conference. They clinched the first seed. Bron and AD, and there's a lot of discussion because LeBron is the MVP candidate, but AD is the one who's leading in most of the statistical categories on the team. I have debated that in that, it's kind of misleading because they're closer than people want you to believe they are, and that's a lot of reason why you say AD's leading, but it's not as far of a gap. And then the other part is, how much of it would AD be doing without a LeBron there? We've seen how that offense operates when LeBron sits. Now, that led me to thinking about other duos around the NBA and the playoff field, and what their dynamic exactly is and what role they play. I kind of touched on it already with Harden and Russ, but I'll be breaking that down more. It's going to be on the Clocker Sports article. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Tatum gets all the love, but Brown kind of does a lot of the dirty work, and actually that playoff run a few years ago was led by Brown. As much as we gave Tatum the praise, Brown was out there scoring the buckets and continues to be a guy who does it on both ends, night in and night out, to be kind of looked at as a sidekick. And it may be that Tatum has the brighter future, but at least right now they're pretty close, and I think that's something to be explored. And then Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Embiid had a 40-20 night the other night, but they lost because TJ Warren went off a 50. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, and more often than not, if Embiid's giving you 40 and 20, you're going to get a W. But I'm of the probably maybe smaller now school of belief that Ben Simmons is the more important key to them actually winning anything. For as much as I love Embiid and what his attitude, his demeanor, his game, I think it's a guard league, and as much as they're playing Ben at the 4 now, but I think you need Ben to be the guy. He needs to be more aggressive, more assertive. He needs to be more complete of a player. A lot of people focus on his 3-point shooting. I want them to focus on free throw shooting. Get it good from the line, because at least then when they're trying to hack you, there's no solution to that. You can always get to the rim at will, but if you don't finish, you're gonna need to start hitting them free throws to make him pay for it. That to me is a much bigger issue than him not being willing to take a 3-pointer. Even though we saw him pluck a couple, that's not the point. I think that, again, if he wants to be really effective and he wants to be a serious threat, fix that free throw line. Watch how quick they respect you, and how them points skyrocket, because he's gonna still get to the line no matter what they do. That's all they know he's gonna be driving. Him and Embiid do clash, but I think they could work if they figured out a way to. Everybody around them should be catch and shoot. There should be nobody else on that team that needs to have the ball to create or can't just catch it off the ball, catch it off a pass and put it in the hole. That they're you still have Tobias Harris and Josh Richardson there, but it just seems like those guys are not the catch and shoot threats. Tobias Harris is my boy, by the way. I mean, he probably fits better than Richardson does, but it just seems like they need some spot up shooters, period, right? And just let them two have a 2-man game going on. But yeah, that's something I'll be looking into a little bit more for Clocker Sports. Keep an eye out on that. There is, speaking of J. Cole, Tobias Harris. If you know, I refer to him as that. Now I might not have to change that now because it could be my boy Cole making to the league. He was recently quoted by Master P as seeking some advice on how to make it to the league, knowing that Master P did it, and said that he was going to be trying to, make a career out of it, trying to get into the league some point or somehow. The Detroit Pistons have responded and said, hit us up for that tryout. This is for all the dreamers. Now, I am very skeptical, not because I don't think J. Cole can play. I think he's got a very good game. He's 35. And he's 35. If he was 30, I might have more of a chance to believe it. But I could see maybe cracking a G League roster, and they give him that probably because of his name. But on the other side, dang, there's a lot of guys who've been really grinding on this, and they're not getting to try with the Pistons. I think that part is also a little bit, a little sketchy, right? You got guys who have dedicated themselves. Now, that's not to say Cole shouldn't get a tryout with the G League roster, and I would assume that that's what the Pistons really meant. But it's just something to look at, because they said this is for all the dreamers, and there's literally dudes out there whose dream it is to make it to the NBA from birth, right? From the first moment they could have they could form a cogent thought, this was it. And J. Cole, it's okay, publicity stunts, man. Okay. Wrapping up the segment talking about the Bulls as usual. We got to bring it a little home flavor. There's a few rookies that they've been linked to, and there's another rookie that I think they could be linked to by proxy. That's going to be the article coming out for Pippen Ain't Easy. I did 3 rookies, one really common, a newcomer in the fold, and then another one who was a top guy. Now it's kind of unsure where he's going to land, and I think that's going to be what makes it interesting for the Bulls with the rumor that came out associated with that. So be on the lookout for that one, PippenAin'tEasy.com. That one should be out sometime tomorrow or Wednesday, so Tuesday or Wednesday, so be on the lookout for that. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, we'll switch gears, talk about the NFL, and woo boy, they finally got some things figured out, but that means that a few more teams are going to have some other things to figure out, and boy, it's just not done. We're not settled. Don't go anywhere. 000's BRB. Back now on 000 and switching gears to the NFL. The opt-out deadline was set for Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. The NFL finally settled on a date when players could no longer declare that they were not going to be in for the coming 2020 2021 NFL season. Listen, a lot of guys have dropped out. It's hurt locally. I had felt the pain. Luckily for us, it's what you would consider a part-time player, but it's a very key part-time player nonetheless. There are teams left and right that are going to have to figure out some stuff, and as you see, just today it was announced that Eagles head coach Doug Peterson came back positive for COVID-19, and you just know that there's going to be an outbreak at some point in the season in the NFL, and one of the things that people have been talking about, and me especially actually, the NFL's had the longest to sit back and watch how all this has happened, and yet and still they allowed this to get to this point where they were unsure whether or not they could even do anything. And among the people who had been opting out, you had Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford and Jaguars quarterback Gardner Minshew among the latest, but those guys are COVID. So back to the opt-out guys. OBJ had recently complained about this, and this was before they had the protocol set in, because that was another part of the thing that they had to agree upon before they had all these other mechanisms in place. OBJ was recorded or on record. Dang, I cannot get this out. OBJ was on record as saying that they don't have anybody, they don't have the protocols in place, they don't have safety measures, and they're just out there going to get money. But he was still going to play. Again, it's all about money. There's no safety. Safety is not a concern to any of them. They're going to do it to make it right, but it's not. It wasn't the reasoning behind them doing it, right? The safety itself isn't why they're doing it. They're doing it to make sure they can protect their investment, which is perfectly fine. If that gets the result, whatever, so be it. But he said he was not opting out. This was before they agreed to protocols for testing and whatnot, and so he'll be on the team. But again, that does not say anything for the guys who are on the COVID list now, and that's where you get into the Matthew Staffords and the Gardner Minshews. Two of the latest to be added on to the COVID-19 list, and that Matthew Stafford bears week 1 opponent. Now, I would imagine they will both make it back in time. That's one thing I think about this list that keeps getting overblown. Like, we're talking about it, but there's a really good chance that these guys will all be healthy by the time the NFL actually starts playing any games. There won't be any preseason, but those guys will be out on the field. So I mentioned them, but take it with a grain of salt because I'm not sure that we won't see them. If we don't, it'll be tragic. I wouldn't mind Matt Stafford missing week 1. That wouldn't be so bad. Again, Bears starting off 1-0. Mitchell Trubisky has a pretty good record against them, history against the Lions, though. So I'm not necessarily concerned per se about that game, but Matthew Stafford not being there definitely helps. Gardner Minshew, if he's not there for the Jaguars, he better watch out because he replaced Nick Foles off of missing time. If he misses time, who knows what happens? They might let DJ Shark do it. You never know. So that's not something he wants to do. I'll tell you that much. In football-related news, and I was supposed to lead with this, but, screw rules. The Rock is buying the XFL. That's right, you heard me. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is buying the XFL. He's paying $15 million for it. He and a capital group, Redbird Capital Partners, are paying $15 million. Vince McMahon paid $200 million this time around for the XFL, and he considered bidding on it again after it went into Chapter 11 bankruptcy earlier this year. The whole thing was built to The Rock and his group as a made-for-TV and easy to be transitioned to a bubble by 2021. Here's the thing: if you do it, I think that people are going to watch. They were watching this year. It just became unsustainable for McMahon and friends when things went downhill. Now, they filed for bankruptcy, and he even said himself, McMahon did, that he considered bidding on it again, but, decided against it. The Rock paid $15 million. That's a come up. Listen, it's a shell, and his business partner, Danny Garcia, said as much. It's pretty much a shell right now, but there's a lot of infrastructure there for them to work with, and I floated the idea earlier to a colleague, if you're going to do it, what kind of threat can you pose to the collegiate system? If they don't, they're starting to do this whole, the pay thing, but I would assume that they'd be able to come in somewhere slightly above the pay system that you were getting in college football, that they're developing in college football, right? You can come out with one straight head. Now, do you go for does this hurt D2? I would imagine it probably hurts the D2 guys more, but it only takes one big name guy to go there instead of going to NCAA, a Power 5 school, to make the change. Look, I know there are people who will laugh at that suggestion, but the NBA is taking advantage of this and has allowed the G League to become something like that. The NFL would be wise to do so too. Maybe that's some kind of a partnership that he could work out with the XFL, or between the XFL and the NFL in the future. But I think the XFL is, if it's not thinking about potentially trying to find a way to undercut NCAA, I definitely would. Especially with all the scandal and stuff, and they're bringing in all this money. Again, you might start off with lesser talent young guys, but you could have your own developmental pipeline, and they could be a de facto developmental league for the NFL as well. And these guys are getting paid while putting the wear and tear on their bodies that they should be getting paid anyway. Just a suggestion, and not one that they made, one that I was just pondering after thinking about all of the possibilities with this. Again, as I said, the XFL, was having quite a resurgence when it was back around, but COVID ruined it. Now, I also thinking about, if The Rock and friends are going to do this, he's got to staff the entire league with wrestling guys, wrestling greats, and I need storylines. I need, for real, beef every week backstage between the owners, bets, and all types of stuff. Like, not real bets, obviously, but, I need it. I want there to be some theatrics to this. If you're going to do it, Rock, you got it. Come on, man. Do it right. Now, I would imagine he's going to try to keep it as fan-friendly, traditional football as possible, or at least to the amount that they had already were trotting out there, but if you want to make it an exciting twist, throw some backstage storylines. Maybe you throw an owner or a general manager through a table. Everybody's happy. Just a suggestion. Just something to keep under your hat. And then another one I touched on last week, and I'll be exploring this over Clocker Sports too, are the 2020 Tampa Bay Bucks Tom Brady's best. And if not, where do they rank? It has to be up there. Again, I was talking about teams with Hernandez and Gronk, Randy Moss, early in James White's career. This group, though, despite having some advanced age with LaShawn McCoy, you still got Vaughn back there. I know nobody likes him, but you still got Rojo back there. And on the outside, you got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. This is easily the best pair of receivers. Now, you might think that he might have had Randy at one time, which was better than both of them. And Jules, who's a very good slot receiver. But as far as outside weapons, Godwin and Evans are the best that Brady has had, at least that comes to memory off the top of my head. I'm not a big Pats fan, so I'm not going to act like I know the entire history to heart, but I feel pretty confident in saying he hasn't had two receivers like that in quite some time. Tight end is interesting because you have Gronk there, and Gronk kind of left due to injury and being beat down, but maybe he was more mental and physical. But he won't have to do all the lifting by himself. That's the important part there. He won't have to do it all by himself. He'll have O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate as well, and that is something that I think makes his offense even more interesting. Not only we knew what Brady could do with two tight ends, he's got three. Holy hell, what are you going to do about that? And then you got the backfield, and don't be surprised if you see a resurgent LaShawn McCoy. We know how these type of deals can kind of revitalize guys and make them find some new legs, and he's not going to be doing all the work either. He'll be splitting time too. The Bucks drafted Vaughn this year. This isn't just a toss-in player, and Rojo was a higher pick. Now, they might have lost favor with him, but that doesn't mean he won't get touches. This is a very talented roster. Now, Brady, for his part, had the lowest touchdown rate of his career last year in the season that he played full. Now, that excludes his first year when he was, played like a game, and then the year that he got injured. Lowest touchdown rate of his career, and he's had his yardage going down and all that. But how much of that was the depleted weaponry on the Patriots? And again, there's something at every level in Tampa. So that'll be the article for Clocker Sports comparing the greatest Brady offenses and finding out where this Bucks one rests and all of that. Shifting to the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks are still interested in Antonio Brown. He recently was told by the NFL that he would be suspended for 8 games, regardless of if he started with the team or not. Didn't think you would hear much about him in the meantime before that, but apparently the Seahawks felt like they need to let it be known that they are still interested. In the last episode, I talked about how Lamar wanted him, and John Harbaugh gave that super diplomatic answer about respecting Lamar's point of view and appreciating his opinion and all that kind of stuff. The really long, nice gnaw. The Seattle news comes from Pete Carroll himself, who's not one who is shy to speak up on him. Now, I will say this about AB. Again, he's got to be suspended 8 games, but if he gets back on the field, him with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, oh my Lord, Russ is going to have some weapons. He won't have protection. That line's still trash, but he's going to have some weapons. And that's pretty much all he needs anyway. Now, they're not the only ones who are rumored to be kicking the tires. The Ravens are supposed to be still interested, and that's intriguing because his cousin, Hollywood Brown, is the receiver there. And he bulked up. Those two on the outside, that's a Madden squad. If you get AB to Baltimore, look out for that offense, boy. That might be something that where in the playoffs Lamar can finally unlock something because AB has a knack for getting open against any type of defense and coverage. That'd be something to keep an eye on. But also, rumored to be kicking the tires or looking for him, and this is maybe just a rumor that by circumstance, the Chicago Bears. Yikes. Listen, for all the talent that he has, this is not the situation. You got a fragile mentality quarterback that I think will be starting the season. There's some turmoil here and a make it or break it year. While I could see an all-in move being intriguing, this is not the guy that I would be willing to risk that for. You have some cohesion on this team. No matter what the outside says, these guys are pretty much together on a lot of this stuff, and that includes being behind Mitchell Trubisky. So don't expect to see them jumping at this opportunity, despite the fact that they might be rumored to do so. I don't think there's much to it. Extend Allen Robinson first and foremost before you go sign anybody else. Okay, quit playing. But beyond that, if they don't win this year, these dudes won't be around the front office and Matt Nagy, I believe. So maybe they do bring him in to kind of save that, YOLO. And who knows what happens when he actually gets closer to being reinstated. But I would imagine that'd be a contender. And I don't know if the Bears will be that at that point in time. The Seahawks were also, though, supposedly interested in having Josh Gordon return. And that's interesting because he's another one who just can't seem to stay on. Now, his is more frequent than AB's is, but this is kind of what Seattle has been the entire time under Pete Carroll, that place where guys can go and reclaim their careers and kind of have some freedom to be themselves because it's up in the great Northwest. There's not much happening, right? You're not in the public spotlight, despite them being a really good team. You're just not in the spotlight like that, and either one of those guys would be a great addition. AB probably fits a little bit more with what they have already. You got the vertical threats, in DK, and Tyler Lockett, who can do a little bit of everything. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Seahawks stayed pat. Their issue isn't receivers so much. I mean, I guess it's thin, but their issue, hear it all. Well, we know you hear it because you said that you want to turn the TVs off. Like, he doesn't say the wrong things. That's not an issue for him. So I'm not buying the hype. You have a lot of guys who are, oh, Mitch said that this and that and third. Yeah, that's cool. I'm more excited by the fact that he was working with the receivers. I'm more excited by the fact that he was working with Christensen and that he says he's healthy. I still need to see it, but I his words mean little. Foles, same difference, but it was a different kind of talk as well. It was, he's comfortable in the offense. The lingo is much very familiar, very similar to what he had in Philadelphia, so he feels at home in it. He says he's taking it one play at a time, and he's not focused on winning the job. He's just focusing on going out there and playing one play at a time. And he said he's not out there fighting Mitch or trying to necessarily beat Mitch. He said if Mitch makes a good throw, he's going to high five him. He makes a bad throw, he's going to tell him where he could have helped. I think Foles is in a much better place with this. I think Mitch starts the season, and I think he gets a game, maybe two, but I think that hook is quick if the Bears feel like they can get something out of Foles that they're just not going to get out of Mitch this year. I don't think he has I don't know if he makes it 4 games. I really don't. My early prediction that he gets to Atlanta and you see Foles, or if not, you see Foles the very next week because Mitch got beat so badly by Matt Ryan and them boys. I just don't see it happening. For the Bears, I hope so, because long term, you need Mitch more. It's not going to be Foles long term. But I just don't know. I'm not hearing anything different, and no preseason means we won't get to see it. Now, I wrote the article for Last Word on Pro Football about how a fewer preseason games would actually help the Bears, but I wasn't talking none. That's kind of concerning, and you're going to see injuries, and it's going to be chaos. But I guess it's going to be chaos for everybody. So the principle of that article still holds, but this is definitely the extreme that I was not considering at all. And lastly, I have to plug it. Speaking of Last Word on Pro Football, the top 10 in the NFC North going into 2020 article, and I'm excited about this one because it's a tough group. I was surprised at how much talent is in the division, and not because I didn't know, but when you list it, right, it gets really tough to sort them out, and I'm sure not everybody's going to agree. That's fine, but I have pretty solid feeling on my list here about who the guys are. Now, I'm not going to give you the top 5. I'll give you the bottom 5. I'm going to tease you with the bottom 5. And the bottom 3, I'm going to just throw them out there. You got bottom 4, Trey Flowers, Matt Stafford, Devontae Adams, and Kirk Cousins. I'll let you guess if that's the order or not. Or if I'm just throwing those names up. But those are the bottom 4. And then the 5th, Zadarius Smith. Now, here's the excerpt from Zadarius Smith. I'll give you this in full, and then you're going to have to read the article yourself to get the top 5. Green Bay struggled defensively for years, repeatedly finishing in the mid-teens and over the past few years in the 20-plus range. Last season, they finished 18th in yards for the second consecutive year, but were 9th in points allowed. That was their best finish since 2010, and Zadarius Smith was a large part of that. He racked up 13.5 sacks, good for 6th in the NFL, and came in 5th with 50 pressures, and he led the league with 22 quarterback knockdowns. He and his running mate Preston Smith formed one of the most ferocious pass rushing duos in the NFL. Now, that's just number 6, and I already told you the bottom 4, Cousins, Adams, Stafford, and Flowers. You're going to have to read the article to find out who my top 5 are. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Please be sure to follow me on Twitter at Joshy Buck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, and the email address, clockersports@gmail.com. Until the very next time, I'm gone.